My name is Rosa Ferdosmaken. I am a social impact entrepreneur whose work is at the intersection of food and technology. I am delighted to be here with all of you today to share my vision and a practical social impact tool with you for how to transform your own colleges and university settings, your campuses into sustainable food ecosystems. And before I just dive into this Spark session, I want to give thanks to Michelle King and also Bita Ansari of Ashoka for giving me this opportunity to share this vision with you. I'm really, truly grateful and inspired by Ashoka. And so I'm grateful to be sharing this vision with the Ashoka family community today. So let me just make sure that my screen is totally, okay. I'm gonna move this so that I can see the slide. I'd like you to imagine your own college or university campus literally transformed, physically transformed into a sustainable food ecosystem through participation on a social impact mobile app for universities that benefits students and campuses alike. And what I mean by that is imagine students on campus cooking for other students on campus, creating these homemade meals for them that are budget friendly and that where the ingredients are sourced from their own gardens on campus or from urban growers around the school vicinity. So students with basic cooking skills leveraging those life skills of theirs to generate some money while they're a student away from home, maybe from mom or dad or grandparents home cooking, using those basic skills to generate some income in a flexible way, in a fun, creative way, sharing their cultures, their cuisines, their backgrounds, their stories, their histories, their dining rituals, really connecting with students from other cultures on campus. Meanwhile, the students who are the eaters, the ones that are looking for a homemade meal instead of, ordering takeout or junk food or, getting something from a Grubhub or Postmates or Uber Eats or something like that, that's coming from, a chain or franchise, really getting a homemade meal on campus in an affordable, budget conscious way where they are not only from the budgetary perspective, they don't have to pay tip, tax, service charge, or delivery fees. A lot of these costs that add up for students that are barely, making it by to begin with. Not only that, but they are getting a sense of these mini cultural immersions on campus. When you think about student exchange programs and what the point of those is really to immerse oneself in another culture, to become more aware, more conscious, more appreciative, understanding of other cultures, of other human beings, other people that are inhabiting the same home, the same planet as us. And I'm interested in allowing students on campuses to experience these mini cultural immersions at their own school, within their own campus setting. And although, there's a sense of, we talk about diversity, cultural diversity on campuses. And yet what I've seen myself at different campuses, including, the ones that I graduated with from myself, is that there was a lot of diversity on campus, and yet there were a lot of silos. And what I mean by that is that, for example, the Korean students were primarily hanging out with the Korean students, and the Indian students primarily with the Indian students, and the French students with the French students, and so on and so forth. And so, although we talk about diversity on campuses, there's a lot of these cultural silos on campuses. And what I'm interested in seeing come to fruition is that students within these different cultural silos actually coming out of those silos and almost like a cross-pollinating, engaging with one another from other cultures at their own school. And one of the most effective ways that I have found, one of the most authentic ways to connect with other people, even from an evolutionary perspective, has been through food, through shared meals, through storytelling. And so that is a core part of this social impact tool that I've created. I'm going to get into a little bit deeper here. But with this particular slide that we're on, imagine, it's about transforming campuses so that students are cooking for one another, sharing meals, getting jobs, and leveraging their basic skills. At the same time, a portion of the funds that come out of the app going back to the school to help facilitate growing food on campus for the benefit of students and faculty alike. So transforming the physical landscape, the underutilized spaces on campuses to grow food for students and faculty to enjoy. And this practical tool that I'm talking about is a social impact mobile app that I created. It is called Bytes, Eat with Your Tribe. That is the full name of the app. And what it does is it helps us connect and celebrate cultures and cuisines and storytelling all in one, and leverages that combination to transform campus settings around the US. And I do want to point out is that this app right now is available only within the US right now, but the vision is global. So I want to move on from there. And I want to come to this particular quote that I always felt very inspired by. Carlo Petrini, the founder of Slow Food International from Italy, he once said something really beautiful. He said, if you want to change the world, don't do it with sadness, do it with joy, right? Because joy pulls people in. It helps them buy in. It helps them to have a sense of hope, optimism, to envision something, possibilities, right? Positive possibilities. And that is at the core of the experience that students will have on this app. And I'll get further into how that is and how a sense of joy is created through this app. So just 1 second. I want to make sure that if anyone is, okay. So if anyone is, has questions or anything, I kind of stopped here. Please feel free to put them in the chat and I will seek to answer all of them by the end of this chat, by the end of this talk. And if I can't, then my contact information is on literally the last slide of the slide deck, and you can always reach out to me. So having said that, I want to, in terms of the Bytes manifesto, so this is the manifesto that is shown both within the app and also on the website. And this is a manifesto that is really speaking to the greater society. This is not strictly tied to college and university settings, although they are certainly a part of this. But this is the grander, bigger vision. And I'm actually just going to read it to you. This is really the core of everything that I'm working toward. So we imagine a healthy food ecosystem and a nourishing cultural landscape that's supported by mindful actions of humans like you. We seek to inspire, empower, and help you create memorable and meaningful human connections through food-centered experiences. We support sustainable urban food growers, offer creative gigs to cooks of all skill levels, celebrate diversity and inclusion, promote storytelling, explore world cultures, and build resilient communities. Welcome to our community. So, in terms of ethos and values, think before we get into the nitty-gritty of how this app actually works, that's captured sort of more on the nitty-gritty slides coming up soon, I wanted to talk about the core values behind my work, behind this app. And to do that, I actually have to stop here and tell you a little story. And I'm telling you this story because this social impact mobile app is really a part of my life's path. It's a part of my spiritual path. It's a part of a calling that I've had since I was in elementary school as a little girl. And I knew that there was something that I needed to do in this life to make, to benefit humanity, to do something for, to elevate social consciousness, to help elevate and strengthen the human fabric of our society. And so as a social impact entrepreneur, I'm really interested in creating ethos-driven technologies that benefit people and planet. And this particular app, how it came to be, and I think this story is really important to you understanding how this translates to your college, university campus and setting, and why I care so much about it for students participating. You see, several years ago, I was going through this massive divorce, and it was extremely exhausting and wiped me out in so many ways. And I was seeking to, I was looking back on my life, and I was seeking to recreate a sense of meaning and purpose in my own life, because I felt like the rug had been pulled out from underneath me, and my life had sort of been shattered into all these pieces of broken glass, right? All these pieces that now felt very fragmented and disconnected. And I reflected back on this quote by someone I really loved, a historical figure, Eleanor Roosevelt. And she had said something along the lines of, and I don't want to butcher her quote, but she said something like, "The most important thing in life is not happiness. The most important thing in life is meaning, creating a sense of meaning and purpose in your life. And happiness is a byproduct of that." And that completely resonates with me. And it completely resonated with me in the darkness of my own divorce. And so I used that quote to inspire me, to move me forward, and to help me create a sense of meaning and purpose in my own life at that time. And at the time I was, and I've been since, working in the technology space, but I started reflecting back on my own life and looking at those pieces that really resonated with me over the years and stood out and spoke to me. And they were both, light and dark, and some of them were happy and some of them were not so happy, but they all informed who I became over the years. And, when I looked back, I remembered my childhood and coming to the US and not really being an immigrant, but being stranded in the US because of the circumstances of how we came to the US. And then a revolution had broken out in Iran, and hostage crisis had kind of, exploded out there in Iran. And we were stranded. We had to reset a life from scratch in this country with nothing. And I remember that we ended up settling in a place, a part of the country that really lacked diversity, that lacked inclusiveness, that lacked belonging and participation, that did not celebrate diversity at all, that barely tolerated it. And so those pieces had stayed with me from my childhood to inform what my values were going to be, moving forward in my own life, what I did care about. And I remember how my mom struggled to make ends meet, struggled to find work, right? There was no sense of economic empowerment, no sense of being able to
Rosa, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I'm just looking at time. We haven't yet gotten to the description of the app, and I'd love to make sure that there's time for questions. There's already been several questions in the chat. And so if we could even just spend 5 minutes going through the app, I'd love to make sure there's at least 5 to 10 minutes.
I'm so sorry. Yes, absolutely. So in any case, those were the pieces from my own childhood that I injected as the DNA into this app to create the social impact tool. Now, how does this app called Bytes Eat with Your Tribe that I shared on a previous slide, how does this work for students as eaters? They download the app, and each time that the app launches, they're kind of met with a different empowering, inspiring quote. They place a food order through the app with a cook at their own school who indicates their school affiliation. Like, let's say, for example, Arizona State University. Let's say the student eater and the student cook are both at Arizona State University students. The student eater places a food order with the student cook on campus. That could be for dropped off meals, meal prep services, or in-home dining experiences in their dorm, in their apartment, in their shared home, with that student cook at school. And the student eater is not paying any tip, tax, service charge, or delivery fee for this experience, right? And then after they have the meal that's prepared for them by the cook, they get to go back on the app and rate and review that cook. I'm going to jump forward to the students as cooks. The students as cooks, basically, these are students at your colleges and universities with basic cooking skills. These are not people who are trying to be chefs or open a restaurant one day. It could be an anthropology student. It could be an English major student. It's any student with basic cooking skills who wants to leverage that, use their basic cooking skills to cook some meals for another student on campus, and in the process, share their culture, talk about their culture, their dining rituals, their background, and create this mini cultural immersion for another student on campus. And again, like I said, they can offer drop-off meals and meal prep and in-home experiences to these other students at their school. These student cooks, are completely in control of their own food pricing, schedule of availability, whatever they want to offer, whatever food they want to offer. They can edit their profile at any time. They do need to upload a food handler's card to complete their cooking profile. And what I mean by that is that they need to go online and do about an hour and a half of a online, watch a video, and then take an online test. And the whole process takes about an hour and a half. It's about $8 US. And then they upload that food handler's card to indicate to us, that they understand safe food handling practices. So I'm going to give an example here. So for example, Doreen, she's an ASU student. She places a food order through the app. She orders some homemade Indonesian food from Marcus, who's a student cook at ASU and whose background happens to be Indonesian. Doreen loves Indonesian food, so she orders $100 worth of food for her 2 roommates and herself. She pays no tip, tax, service charge, or delivery fee for her food order placed through the app. Now, of that $100 food order, $80 or 80% always gets paid out to the student cook. That means this is their job, right? It covers their cost of their ingredients and their services, basically the time that they put into this. That's how they're getting paid. They get 80%. $3 or 3% gets paid to Stripe, which is a payment processor that allows this transaction to happen through the app. Now the remaining $17 or 17%, so the remainder always gets paid out, 100% of it gets paid out back to the school through the app. So I give everything back to the schools, right? I don't keep any of it, not a penny. So each time a foodie, an eater, a student foodie at school places a food order with a student cook, regardless of the dollar amount, 80% is always getting paid to the cook, 3% always Stripe, and then the remaining 17% always gets paid back out to your own school, to your own campus through the app. All funds are going back to you and to the students. The app keeps nothing. So how does your school actually receive these funds? So on a quarterly basis, all funds that are associated with food orders that were placed at your school, students cooking for students at your school, those funds will be paid out to you electronically, or if you prefer by a mailed check, but paid out electronically to your school through the account or department that you've designated to receive those funds. And you have to provide contact information for at least 2 responsible individuals at your school to oversee the receipt of those funds once a quarter. And what those funds are, excuse me, I'm going to go back a slide here. What those funds are meant to do is to be used specifically for the purpose of converting some of your campus landscape into edible food gardens for students to enjoy, right? It funds your initiative to grow food on campus for students and faculty. In terms of food safety, the student cook has to have a food handler's card, as we talked about, to understand safe food handling practices. There are COVID-19 guidelines that they must adhere to and that they're told about repeatedly, both through the app and when they sign up and before they perform any kind of a meal, cook any kind of meal for another student. Students with food allergies have to indicate when they're placing the order what their own food allergies are. And in fact, the app will not allow them to move forward with their request until they've filled out that field in terms of food allergies. In terms of kitchens to cook at, so these student cooks at your campuses can either prepare meals at that student eater's own location, like a dormitory that's got a community kitchen, or that student's apartment or house. I'm talking about the eater's apartment or house, the foodie eater. Or these students who have basic cooking skills can also perhaps use a licensed community kitchen, or with approval and support from your own school, they can use on-campus facilities. Perhaps it's a part of your campus cafeteria. Perhaps it's your campus educational kitchen or other commercially approved indoor or outdoor cooking space at your own school. In terms of physical safety.
It's now about 5 minutes from the end, so whenever you're ready, we can turn to Q&A as well. Sure,
and this is the last slide I'm gonna go through, and I've covered everything. In terms of physical safety, this social impact mobile app, it mimics, with regard to the gig economy, like an Uber, Lyft, Airbnb, that's become very mainstream within the US. Uber students are getting into a car with someone who's driving them somewhere, Airbnb, someone staying at someone else's home. In terms of this app, Bytes, Eat with Your Tribe, it's really about students cooking for students and transforming their own campus settings into sustainable food ecosystems, both through the food experiences and also through the campus setting. So with that, this slide here, how to get started, will tell you that you go to the Bytes website and click on how it works, and then click on universities, and you're going to get a printout of information that you can share with your school. You can enter information for your school representatives if you're interested in participating. And your school would essentially be sharing information that's available to it on the website with its own student population, whether through newsletters on campus, school newspaper, school radio station, cultural clubs, student services, gardening club, things like that. There's a shareable flyer that's available on the website. Okay. And this is some of the recognition that this social impact mobile app has received in the past. Sustainability Solutions Award for Food System Sustainability from Arizona State University. It was a part of Apple's first ever entrepreneur camp. And also Microsoft and Giving Tech Labs recognized it as being selected to meet 2 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So I'm opening it up now to your questions. Trying to see where I can see the questions. Let me just.
There's several that have been dropped into the chat, and so if you stop screen sharing, you should be able to access that.
Okay. Let's see. Questions. Available in Canada, probably in a couple of years. I'm sorry, not yet. Possibly a year, but it could be a couple of years. Who takes care of the edible gardens within campuses and how you fund it? So the edible gardens on campus, that's entirely up to your own school, how you do it. I've seen different schools do this differently. in terms of, for example, some schools have gardening clubs, and those students are very excited about doing something like this. Other schools, it might be the, you know, the maintenance, the folks who maintain the gardens in general, also maintaining the edible gardens. Another very good option is to do a collaboration between gardening club and cultural clubs on campus, because these are clubs that represent different cultures on campus. So those students, I think it would be very interesting for them to possibly grow food, those ingredients on campus that represent their own cultures and cuisines. For example, you know, Japanese eggplant is not the same as Italian eggplant, right? Like they have different varietals. And so that's something that might be interesting to cultural clubs to participate in. And I look forward to getting concrete examples of how the app works. I'm not sure.
You did that after.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. How does this model help students break their cultural silos? So for example, that's an excellent question, because right now on campuses around the US and possibly around the world, students are primarily, some of them are already informally doing this, but they're staying within their silos. So some Indian students, for example, that I know of, are cooking for other Indian students who miss, you know, food from back in India, right? And these are like students that came here to study, for example. But they're not going out of their silos to cook for someone else because they think it might be perceived as weird, or there's not really a mechanism to do this. So, but they know some, you know, friends who don't know how to cook. And so they're cooking for their friends, and they're making money, and they're cooking from their own kitchens, you know? So, you know, one student, the cook, is cooking for someone else from their own culture, but no one's stepping out of their silos. And this app is meant to, through an exploration of world cuisines through the app, it's meant to allow these people who have basic cooking skills, these students, to share their cuisines and their culture with students from other backgrounds, right? So because they're still making money, so now they can just cook for someone else, and this app really facilitates that. Let's see, have you run into any issues with campus competition with companies the university has contracted? So this isn't to interfere with whatever your school or campus might already be doing with a contract. This is for the students to use and to kind of re-envision the campus for themselves. Really, this is more like a grassroots thing happening on campuses, so that the students are allowed to cook for themselves, to cook for one another, right? To make some money in the process, to share cultures in the process. And then a part of the proceeds from that app are going back to your own school. So there's no real competition. It's not like kicking anyone else out. It's really coexisting with them. Let's see. Why not perform subsequent sale outside the app after the cook and eater met? I don't understand the question. Can you rephrase it, please? Why not perform subsequent sale outside the app after the cook and eater met?
Raphael, maybe you can go on audio, take your mute off.
So, sorry, I didn't have headphones on. Actually, I wanted to know why not the cook and the student eater, after they met, they don't, you know, make their transaction outside of the app, and therefore they can both share their $100 instead of pay $17 to the school and $3 to the payment.
They could absolutely do that, Raphael. They could absolutely do that. My hope, though, is to give a portion of that back to the schools to grow the food so that it benefits the whole student population, so that food is grown for everyone, and it fundamentally transforms campus settings. It creates a healing environment for students, right? It's very healing to be around nature, to be around things that are growing, and to be able to actually pick things and to cook from something and create sustainable food ecosystem. If the students are doing this outside the app, that's fine, but that's not going to give, that's not going to help transform their campus. They're just going to be doing the cooking piece. What I'm doing is a holistic thing where it really connects all the dots between the food that is grown and the eater and the cook, like the symbiotic, the relationship between these three. Because if the students are outside the app, and absolutely they could do that. I mean, if you have a friend, you don't need to use this app, but this is really about helping cultures. It's a tool, right? It's not mandated, it's not forced on anyone. It's just a tool that students can use if they choose to share their cultures with other people, you know, in an exploratory, adventurous way, and offer maybe, you know, different cuisines and talk about themselves in their bios and talk about how they grew up. It's really, it's meant for engagement. Certainly no one needs to stay on it, but as they use it, it also puts money back to the school to incentivize them, because not all schools are necessarily sustainability minded, right? It's to incentivize more of that thinking, that ethos, for the schools to start participating in transforming, you know, this microcosm. Campuses for me are like a microcosm, this little bubble of the macrocosm of if we can sort of create the sustainable, resilient food system, food ecosystem on campuses, then we can replicate that much easier in a much more, you know, people could envision it more readily for the macrocosm. And as these students leave school, they go off, you know, they graduate. Some of these ethics or what they experienced hopefully stays with them and informs who they become in society and helps to transform society at large.
Yeah. Rosa, we're going to have to wrap up, but just one final question that came up is if you can give the names of any universities you're already working with through the app.
So this, Ashoka, is actually the first time that I'm sharing this app with the college and university settings.
Great.
So it's been created, and now it's sort of like a tool that you can, you know, connect with me, you know, with the contact information that's in the slide deck. Ask any questions. I'm happy to do a Zoom call with a group or one-on-one, or with some of your folks to see how you might be interested in setting that up at your school. There's no downside. You don't pay anything. You don't lose anything. And in fact, you get revenue for your school for participating. And your students benefit as well.
Thank you so much, Rosa. If you could actually drop your contact info in the chat box itself, since we don't, or put the slide back up, then as people sign off, they can maybe take that information.
This is the website, absolutely. That's the website. And this is the app, Bytes Eat with Your Tribe. When you go to the website, click on how it works, and then tap on universities, and everything you need is answered there and provided there, and you can reach out to me there as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to all of you. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.